Hi, it's Fox from modelmaking.guru here. Welcome to part 6 of our build of the DeAgostini studio scale Millennium Falcon. Right, in this episode hopefully we'll finish the cockpit. I'm going to jump around magazine issues a little bit because I've got the final parts of the cockpit. Chopping everything. The canopy, some stick-on greebles for the tube, and I've also got the lighting kit from issue 9, I think. So what I'm hoping to do is get all the painting done now and the weathering, get all this finished, get it assembled, and show you the light leak issue on the cockpit tube, and then the next issue I shall have to fix that. So let's crack on. Okay, now what we're going to be doing first of all is some more dry brushing. Well, I say some more dry brushing, we haven't done any yet. Some dry brushing, but I'm not going to be using acrylic paints, I'm going to be using oil paints. We've already done the pastels and stuff on here. I just want to put some more darkness and dark shading in there, and a bit more grime and grit and dirt. So I'm going to be using my good old standby of oil paints. Acrylic paints are fine, but they dry really fast on the brush and you end up with bits and lumps and it's not very good. Oil paints you can work for ages and you can blend them in. So I'm going to be using MIG 502 Abteilung Starship Filth, my old standby, and MIG 502 Abteilung German Grey Highlight, my other old standby. And I'm using a soft chisel edge brush. If you've watched my other videos, you've seen me do dry brushing 1,000 times. Some oil paint placed onto a piece of card. I'm using card, I'm not using my old plastic thing anymore. The card absorbs some of the oil, so it helps the oil paints be a little less shiny and maybe dry a little tiny bit quicker. So leave them on the card or cartridge paper for like 5 minutes or so. So get some paint on your brush. You know how this works. Get most of it off on the tissue. Just gently. Till there's not much left. And then simply work it where you want to work it. But all I'm going to be doing is just very gently working the Starship Filth into some of the recesses and areas that I want slightly darker. Just see if I can change my angle so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just very gently, I'm brushing upwards to get up the side so it fades towards the top. Around the edges. Just any areas that I want to be shaded slightly darker, around the seats, where the doorway is. Now you might not, or you probably won't see this on camera, but I can see the difference in my eyes of seeing. I'll go around a bit in here as well. Now you might think I'm painting over all this silver stuff, isn't that going to lose it? Well, no, because what we're going to do when we've done is get ourselves and cotton bud, and then just simply very gently rub over the areas that were silver, just so we can bring them back a little bit and see them again. It's like dry brushing in reverse. I'm removing the paint on the raised edges. Now, as I've said before, we are going to be touching up these silver parts, so it's not the end of the world. Quite often what I will do is, if I'm painting something a silvery colour, I'll paint it the flat aluminium as the base colour first, then do all my weathering, and then go back and touch up the highlights, just so then you get this effect of slightly dirty metal with some highlights, rather than just a nice clean crisp bit of silver. So that's that done. Can't really see on camera what I've actually done there. I'll see if I can get closer for you. You probably won't see any of it because it's a dark colour and its lighting's not brilliant, and it's a dark colour on top of another dark colour. You probably won't see any of that. Give it another go on one of the side pieces. No, actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. No, I'll give it a go on the side piece. Again, we're just going to dry brush in. Get some darkness. Now this is on the floor, so I'm going to make this bit down here darker and filthier, just because it's where the floor is. Maybe a bit on the top because where people's arms might rest. Just gently adding a little bit, and I'll put some in these little strips here. I'll just dot it into them, and the reason I'm doing that is, as you noticed before, the metallic paint was quite rough and ready and not exactly crisp edged. So all I'm going to do now is rub that off. Hopefully the Starship filth will gather around the inside edges and blend slightly, meaning that my little slightly rough silvery painted edges now look a little crisper. Now in the magazine it tells you can dry brush these silver raised details. You can do, nothing wrong with that. However, if you're doing that, you're really relying on acrylic paints, and dry brushing any acrylic paints, like I said, is a messy business. Personally, what I did was just painted them with a very fine brush, and I'll show you that when we do the touch-ups. So there we have a bit more Starship filth and dirt added to the sidewall. I put a little note in the last video saying that, you know, the details are a bit rough and ready, and this was absolutely fine because I know I'm going to be doing things afterwards that will smooth out the edges slightly. Next little bit will be a highlight of German grey highlight. So I'm going to leave this to dry for a little while. When you dry brush an oil paint, ideally you want to leave it about 24 hours before you either varnish it or do anything else on top, just to make sure it's dry. But I'm going to leave this a few hours now just because I need to dry brush the light stuff on it. It's not too bad if it mixes a bit with the German grey highlight, with the Starship filth. I really am having trouble talking today. If the German grey highlight mixes with the Starship filth, it'll kind of blend a little bit, so that's fine. So, back in a moment. Okie dokie, right, I've weathered all the rest of the cockpit parts. I even put some of the Starship filth dry brushed onto the console. If you can see that, my focus isn't behaving today. I brushed it around the edges and just a little bit at the bottom just to suggest some grime and dirt, only very lightly. I also brushed some on the silver control sticks so it can go into all the little grooves, and again we'll be touching these up with some other paints anyway, as with these two top bits here, so that should look quite nice. It just means it's in the groove, so when I paint some lighter colours over the top, the grooves will stand out. So what's the next step now? Next step now is to do exactly the same but using the German grey highlight. Same principle, we're going to dry brush this. Now the aim of this is just to catch the edges and raised parts. We did a bit of this with the pastels in the last episode, but this is the proper full on. So all I'm doing is I'm getting some of the 502 Abteilung German grey highlight, getting most of it off on the tissue. Now I want almost nothing now. I was a bit generous with the Starship filth, but this stuff I want almost nothing. As you can see, it's kind of a light blue colour, and it is really a nice complementary highlight colour for German grey. And all we're going to do with this, it's really simple. I'm going to use the brush, get more paint off. I'm going to use the brush as flat as possible. I'm not going to be dabbing it on like that. I'm going to be doing it this way, just to get the raised edges. I'm just going to, very carefully and gently, dry brush it. Let me just turn around. Dry brush it so. Probably a bit too much still. You really want almost nothing on the brush. It's just going to catch the edges. If you can see this. And you can also use it to shade slightly as the paint wears away on the brush. I'm going to run it at an angle like this now to the edge to catch this edge here. Again, I'm not too fussed about the silver parts, we'll redo those. So I'm just gently doing it over there. I'm catching it on some of these coloured panels, but I can cotton bud that off in a second. I will actually blend this a bit. Just doing it this way very, very gently, just to try and do some blending. I want almost nothing on there at all. Get myself a cotton bud. Get it off here. Get it off these silver parts. And just blend this a little bit, because it's a little grainy. And there we have our enhanced, if you can see that, our enhanced side panel. So I'll go off and do the rest of the cockpit. Then when we come back, we will do some little of the detail parts, and we'll start sticking this puppy together. So, back in a moment. Okie dokie. Right, all the oil paint weathering's been done. I'll show you quickly some pictures now of how that came out. As you can see, the German grey highlight is quite subtle. So here's some images. So now let's move on to getting everything else done. Next step, I am kind of jumping around here a little bit. The next step, I'm going to build the ring of the control panels that goes at the back of the cockpit. For this you have this U-shaped piece and two end pieces. Now they need to align in a very specific way. If you follow the magazine, it's quite easy. The sticker goes on here, overhangs, and the bottom piece will attach on and be stuck on with the sticker. This will then go into the back of the cockpit. I'm not exactly comfortable with that. I don't like sticking things together without alignment tabs, but there you go. It needs to be, this ridged bit here needs to be at the back. So if you stand it up, this tab needs to be that way with this little lip at the back, if you can see any of that. So it will go like that. So these rings will line up on the actual ring. So to do it, so it's quite straightforward, a little bit fiddly, but quite straightforward. So let's do that now. Done. We have our back archway. I'll need to, as we did on the other parts of the cockpit, I'll need to go around and paint this bit so it's not a big white mark. But again, I'll just use, well, this is black, so I'll probably use flat black just to hide it. I mean, it's at the back of the cockpit, so you can't really see it anyway. So that's that bit done. Next thing, a little thing I didn't show you how I did it, but because it's too tiny, but the next thing I did was paint the control yoke. Let me just show you. All I did was paint the back part of the control yoke here, Tamiya rubber black. I'll show you that in a second. Just brush painted it very carefully. I decided not to paint these because I quite like the metallic look. I quite like they're going to be metallic anyway, so I quite like the bare metal look. I'll probably put a little accent point on that bit on the top. So they were just brush painted. If you go around and you get a little wobbly on the lines, you've not got a very crisp edge, don't worry, because I'm going to give these a smoke wash, and I'll do that now. And that's just really to give them some texture, but that will actually hide any slightly wobbly lines. So smoke wash is Tamiya Smoke X19. It's almost like a clear colour. Think of it like a clear colour, but a sort of burnt sort of colour-ish. And the same I did with the other when I did the black wash. It's just a jar full of thinner and about 2 or 3 brushfuls of smoke. What I'm going to do on these is quite simply, I've stuck them a little into the tabs down there. Quite simply, get some smoke wash and just apply it. That might take a couple of coats because this is very subtle. These were varnished as well, so the paint won't come off. Remember I said you must always varnish. And what this will do is it'll collect in the little corners and just give some subtle staining to the metal. It is a gloss colour, so I'm not worried about the metal suddenly looking flat. Done. So I'll leave that to dry for about half an hour and then I'll probably give it a second coat. It's like a kind of, it's a bit like Starship Filth in a way. It's a kind of browny, slightly dirty colour, but it's glossy and it works brilliantly. And we'll see more smoke washes as this model goes on anyway. So that is that one done. Right, next up, I'll just clear a space and we will jump ahead again to I think issue 9 and we'll stick the greebles on the cockpit tube. So I'll just go and get my bits and then we'll crack on. Back in a moment. Alrighty, okay, right, now we're going to start sticking the greebles on the outer corridor tubes. Now you get a sprue of, which issue is this? Issue 9. I think it's issue 9, or it could be issue 8. I've kind of lost track now. I do apologise, but I'm trying to get the whole cockpit piece done. So I'm jumping a few episodes here, or jumping a few magazine issues. You get this little sprue, as we explained, with some of the greebles on there, the piping and bits that go on the outside. Now, as we went through in the last one, you're going to need some sprue snips, or pincers or clippers of some sort. And for these, you're going to need some sanding sticks, or something to sand with. It could be sandpaper. Probably, just to be safe, a metal file again, because some of these parts are quite thin. So, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Unlike a 10 even. Unlike a normal model kit, these aren't actually numbered. Normal model kits have a piece number. But in the magazine, it does show you in the magazine which pieces go where. So it's kind of handy. It's dead simple. Now, in the magazine, it does go on a lot about superglue. Remember we talked about CA glue or superglue. You can use superglue to glue these, but personally, I wouldn't. I'm going to be using normal plastic cement. I'm going to be using Tamiya's Extra Thin, which is a really super thin, watery glue that's great for getting into small areas. For gluing big pieces together, you might use a thicker glue. But for gluing these together onto the tube, Extra Thin is a really nice glue because you can just feed it in and capillary reaction will take it into the joins. The reason you want to use a plastic cement is twofold. CA glue, cyanoacrylate glue, or super glue, all it does is bond two pieces of plastic together with itself. It's a really strong grip, however it's not very good at taking sudden shocks. If you drop something that's got two pieces super glued together, the sudden shock can actually break or shatter the glue and it just falls apart. Also, over time, some super glues can break down and lose their adhesion. So if you built this whole model using nothing but super glue, it might fall apart eventually. The other thing is super glue is very, very messy. And same with normal tube plastic cement, tube glue, I wouldn't bother. It's very, very messy, even if you use a cocktail stick. To not have blobs of glue coming out when you glue pieces together. And also, it doesn't give you very long to work with. If you're trying to maneuver a little piece into place, it might have set before you finished. So personally, I would use plastic cement. Plastic cement actually melts the plastic. It welds two pieces of plastic together, so it gives you a much stronger, more permanent grip than super glue. Unless you force it, nothing's going to make those two pieces of plastic come apart. So, let's crack on. What we're going to do, we're going to take everything off the sprue first, sand it down, and then stick it all in place. As we've done before, taking pieces off the sprue. Always cut just after the piece of plastic. Don't cut right against the plastic, because you risk damaging the actual piece itself. Just cut a little, leave a little bit of the gate on the piece. So you've got a little bit there, a little nub. There are lots of different terminologies, like I said. This basic thing is the sprue or the tree. These are called gates. And your aim is to leave a little tiny bit on the piece. One handy thing as well, as you can see, mine's already broken here, so I'm going to have to glue that together. This piece is already snapped before it's even got to me. When you're doing a thin piece like this, to avoid snappage, hold it like that and then snip the end. I'm going to have to glue these in place and cement both halves together, so that's going to be a pain. Right, so all the pieces are off. What we need to do now is clean all these up. Big pieces like this, you can just use a sanding stick. You don't need to use a metal file, but you can do if you want. Really simple. Get yourself something for the dust. Keep an eye on your pieces as well. Ideally, I haven't got anything to put these in right now, but ideally keep these little loose pieces in a little pot or something, just so you don't lose any. All you're doing is take a rough sanding stick. I've got a very rough one and a smooth finisher. And all you're doing is very, very gently, no pressure at all, just sand these down. Just very gently. I'm going for that nub there. So I'm not really pressing much. I'm not really putting any pressure on it because I don't want to really do too much damage to the plastic that's supposed to be there. You can trim it with a knife if you want. That might be a little quicker, but you risk damaging the plastic around it. I know you might not see this because I'm at the wrong angle. So I'm just sanding that away. It's almost gone. There, it's gone. So that little nub is now gone. Leaves a little bit of a rough finish. So take your slightly finer sanding stick and just very gently give it a quick blast. That will smooth it. And then if you really want to get a perfect finish, because you're going to be priming these, don't forget, I've got a third standing stick which is just ridiculously smooth. It's almost like just no grit at all, and that will just buff it out completely. If you want no sanding marks left. I don't know if you can hear the little noise. That's the noise you want to hear. So now I've got a perfectly smooth piece. And we'll go and do the rest on Sam and all the rest. So let's crack on with these. Right, tubes. How do you do tubes? The nightmare or the bane of any Millennium Falcon builder, from fine molds to this, is tubes. Dead easy to do. You can use either your sanding stick or the file. The thing you want to maintain is the curved surface. So all you do is when you're sanding it, don't just sand it. I realise, of course, this is terrible for me to film because all you see is my sanding stick doing this. Don't just sand it like that, because you'll just end up with a flat surface. When you sand it so you angle. How can I do this so you can see it? Have your hand like this on the sanding stick so you can tilt it. What you want to do is angle the stick around the curve. When you're doing any kind of thin pipe work, hold it close to where you want to sand so you're not flexing the whole piece. If I hold it here and do that, this is going to bend and cause stress and fracture. So now let's just try sanding this. So I've got the rough stick again. And you'll see now you've got a nice smooth curve. Now on tubes as well, there is also a seam line down the middle here. There's two ways you can do that. You can either sand it, or if you want to not take your time, get a blade with no pressure at all. Just gently run it along the seam. I'm not putting any pressure on here at all, and it should get rid of that seam line. Now it's probably more obvious because there's the wash weathering on this, pre-made on this piece. So again, I'm not pushing into it, I'm just using the weight of the blade. And you don't have to do this, it's up to you. If you really don't want to do this, that's fine. You can sand it instead, it's just you risk losing the curve. Right, and that is about that. I'll go on and get the rest of these little pieces done, because you don't want to sit here and watch this. And then we will start sticking these puppies on. Okay, right, we have now sanded and filed all the little extra pieces. Now we're going to be adding all the little greebles to the cockpit tube halves. Dead easy if you take your time and you're patient. What do you need? Well, you need all the parts, obviously sanded and finished. Now the instructions, like I said, say use super glue. You can do, but if you want to save yourself a lot of hassle and mess, I'd recommend, like I said before, Tamiya Extra Thin Plastic Cement. If you're wondering why it's glued to a piece of wood, it's so that if I knock it, it doesn't fall over and spill glue everywhere. See? Now the reason I like this extra thin cement is because it is super thin and it comes with a tiny, tiny little brush. And there's a very specific way you can apply this glue. Let's put a piece on and we'll show you. So I've done a couple of pieces already here. We're going to apply piece number 6, which is this one. And it goes like that, you see, just there. Always dry fit a piece before you do it, just to make sure it fits and it works. So, with normal plastic cement, what you do is slap the glue in here and on the edges, and then stick it in. You can do that with this, with the extra thin, but there's an even easier way. Basically, put some glue on here, place the piece, push. Now it's still loose, so what you do is you get the extra thin, get most of the glue off the brush, and just simply place it into the little seam, the little gaps. Because the glue is so thin, capillary action will draw the glue into and underneath the piece, meaning it will stick rock hard and you won't end up with a load of gluey mess. It takes a few minutes to actually start kicking in, so you've got a few minutes to adjust pieces, and that's it. Let's do another one. And then we'll just do a quick tube. So I'll just dry fit these tubes. I hope they fit. This one goes here, I think. Nope, that's the wrong one. That goes there like that. And this one should fit in here. Now it doesn't. And why doesn't it? It doesn't fit because that hole isn't big enough for this. This is too big. So you can either sand this down a bit, or you can widen this hole. Now I'm going to leave this this has just been glued on, so I'm going to leave it for a few minutes, and then I'll widen that hole with the knife blade. So in the meantime, notice how I didn't apply any glue to this, by the way. I didn't need to, because all I do is touch the glue to the hole where the tube goes in. That will disappear inside, and I can run it along the top here. Just touch it to the join between the two pieces. It will go inside, make a secure bond. Remember what I said, it melts the plastic together, it fuses it together. The glue itself isn't sticky, it actually melts the plastic, welds it. So we'll do it on the underside as well. Now if anything goes wrong, for a few minutes you can actually pull the piece off again, and I've actually had pieces gone wrong that I've then pulled off, say 20 minutes later. So you do get some playtime with this. So that now is in place, and I will get my modelling knife, make this hole a little bigger. So you can see here, move these out of the way, this is the hole where the piece needs to go, it's not big enough. So just going to do the old focusy checkings. Let's get this hole widened a little bit. All I'm doing is like I did on the cockpit, take the knife blade, put it in the hole and just gently turn it, just to scrape some of the plastic out. You can hear it scraping, you can see shavings coming out. Just get rid of all those little shavings. Try again. There we go. So same as before, a little bit of the old glue just into the little hole. If it's a particularly weak or wobbly joint, you can put more than you need. It does dry clear, and it's because it's so thin, it's not going to cause any big bulbs or lumps or anything. And any overrun, as long as you don't get dribbles of it going down the side of your model, any overrun will be more than hidden by your primer. Quite generous on here because it's only got one point of anchor, which is this top bit. So just push that in. Just be careful when you're touching glued parts. Push it gently so it doesn't all, the glue doesn't all bubble out, and also push it gently so you don't get fingerprints in it. You don't touch a bit with glue on it and get a massive dot of fingerprint. And that's it. There's lots more greebles to stick on, so I'll go and stick the rest of those on. Okay, right. Now, back to the cockpit. All the oil paints have had a good few hours to dry. They won't be fully dry for at least 24 to 48 hours, but they're dry enough now that I can stick my little chrome highlights on there. If I was actually painting these straight on, I'd actually want to varnish it first. Because I'm only doing a very light dry brush, I should be fine. Also, I've rubbed all the oil paint off the chrome parts anyway, the silver parts. So, I've decided, after looking at it, I'll show you. If you'll see this in the light, I don't know. Maybe if I can get it in. The way the silver came out, the silver parts, slightly grubby. I actually quite like it like that. I was going to just kind of redo over these with chrome silver to make them nice and shiny, but you know what? I actually think it looks quite nice grubby like that. So what I've decided is to not do too much. I'm just going to do some slight dry brushing on the side panels. And for this I'm going to use Tamiya X11 Chrome Silver. It's a really nice colour. It's a great highlight colour if you've painted something in flat aluminium. Flat aluminium is XF16. Despite it saying it's flat aluminium, it's actually slightly shiny. But this is a more shiny colour. This is a gloss colour. Now it's a pig to dry brush. I'm going to use this flat brush. Now when you dry brush with acrylic paints, especially with metallic acrylic paints, it stays on your brush for ages. So what I tend to use a proper paint stripper to remove them. I use Carson's Paint Killer, which is actually so good it's taken the paint off the brush, off the bit of the brush here. So that's how good that stuff is. So I've got my piece of tissue. Same as dry brushing with oils. I'm going to take some paint and load the brush, giving this a really good shake and stir because metallic paints separate out in the pot. I'm going to get most of the paint off on the tissue. And then I'm just going to very carefully go over those raised details, really slowly and carefully, because I don't want to get anything else. I just want it to sit on those raised bits. Now this colour itself is a bit of a pig to dry brush. It doesn't really deposit much. It dries off the brush really quick. So you might not see any of this. But trust me, I can see the difference. It just makes those silver parts pop just a little bit. So that's going to do for those. I'll bring it up so you can see it. Hopefully you can see it. I'll get that in focus on my finger, then it'll behave itself. Hang on. Don't know if that's in focus or not. It just brings a little bit of the bling back. So that's going to do for that. What's left to do on the cockpit now? Next up, I just need to do the little details on here. So that's going to... Oh, I've forgotten. Forgotten to do these control sticks. Hang on, one moment. Because the ridges go this way, I'm going to go up with the brush. Just to get the paint on the ridges and not necessarily all over the rest of the column. Remember, these were covered in some Starship filth, so they're now silver shiny, but there's little hints of Starship filth in the grooves. Not much, but now they're shiny again now, so they look like metal. These little tiny dots here, I will touch in with a tiny brush. Get the brush, I'm going to use a tiny amount. Now the good thing with metallic Tamiya paints is they kind of go where you want them to. So I only almost have to touch it to the piece. And it goes on it. I'm not painting it, I'm just touching it and doing a little circular motion. There's one paint I love painting with, it's Tamiya metallic paints. They're just so pleasing. And that's done. Now we have sparkly bits. I know you probably didn't see any of that. In fact, you didn't see any of that. So let's find another bit to do. Right, so here's the side console. I want to paint that little thing there. So let's get a tiny bit of paint and we'll just rest it on my finger and I'm just going to touch it to it. Hardly moving the brush. Little circular motions. Done. It now has a little shiny bit on it. You can actually see on the picture there how it shines. Right, so I shall now go away, get my oil paints ready, and we'll do the last little bits on there. Then we can put it together. Yay! Back in a moment. Alrighty, last little step, well, one of the last little steps. Now we need to paint the little lights and little dials and knobs and things on here. Now you could do this with acrylics or any other kind of paint. You're just going to be dotting the paint on. However, I found the easiest thing to do, especially using white acrylic is a bit of a pain. When you dab it on, it doesn't really go white, it's like a faded grey colour. I find oil paint's the best. Now I've just got some bog standard oil, artist oils from the hobby shop, white, blue and green. And what I'm going to do is take a very fine brush. I'm just going to get a tiny amount of paint from the tube. That's about it actually. And all I'm going to do, if you can see this, is touch it to the dot. And it's gone wrong. It's very messy and it's very haphazard. If you miss a bit, get a cotton bud, wipe it off. This is also why doing it with oil paints is brilliant. So let's try again. Got no paint on the brush this time, idiot. I can do it straight from the tube because that's all I need. Let's try again. And just touch it to the dot. Done. You won't even be able to see that. That's what I'm looking for, a little tiny dot. Okie dokie, final stretch. Right, as you can see, I've started gluing parts of the cockpit together. Not using super glue again, like in the instructions. I'm kind of ignoring those. I'm only really using super glue where it's metal gluing against plastic or metal to metal, or in this case, these little control sticks. I don't know why I use super glue on those, to be honest, because it's plastic to plastic, but hey. So, got the seats glued in, using the Tamiya thin glue again. Just a little bit of glue on this pedestal, little bit of glue in the back of the seat, put them together, and then just feed some glue into the little joins at the back. Important thing to do with this though, is because you're joining two painted surfaces, scrape the paint off. The glue won't work as well if it's got to fight through paint as well. So where two plastic pieces need to meet and weld together, scrape the paint off. So I've got these two little yolks in. They're super glued because it's plastic to metal. I'm going to put the yolks in now. Their smoke paint is dried. Now this will be super glue again because it's metal to plastic, and I'm going to use some thick super glue for this. So what I will do is get some thick super glue on my little tape dispenser. It's a real struggle to get this stuff out because it's thick, strangely enough. Get the yolk in, just dip the end in a little bit, and then slot it in place. The wrong way around. Brilliant. Slot it in place the right way around. There. Done. The advantage of the thick super glue is you do have a second or two to work with it, so it's not going to weld everything straight away. The second one. Get this one in. The right way around. I'm going to flip over and I'm going to just put a dot of glue there just to really lock them in place, and then put that like this because I can't stand it down. Okie dokie, right, now what's next? Next we have the sidewalls. Actually no, let's do the control panel first. Again, I've scraped the paint off. I've had the knife in these little holes to scrape them out, and I've also scraped off the paint here for the front piece. So we shall get a little bit of the Tamiya Extra Thin in the hole and on the pegs, and I'll put a little bit here as well just because I will. And all you do is seat it in, if you can find the holes, seat it in place. There we go, that's in. And now I can go around the back and just feed some glue to the base of the pegs where they go into the holes, just to reinforce that. And again, this is round the back, so I can put glue on here as well. Remember, this glue is melting the plastic. It's not bonding the plastic, it's physically welding it together. So, that is that bit. Okie dokie, so I went on a bit and glued everything else in. Got the back wall in, got the side walls, the front, and all the control yokes and the dashboard. All looking rather spanky now. Attached the light board at the back. It's just one screw. I couldn't find the actual original screw, so I just improvised and used one of the spare black ones. And I've attached the temporary lighting. I assume this is a temporary lighting unit, just so you can test everything. I don't think this is the one that's finished in the actual model, because you'd never be able to get to that. You'd have to take the ship apart to turn the lights on and off. So I assume that's just a temporary one so you can play with it. Right, let's get this done. I'm just going to dry fit everything now, just to make sure it all fits together. So, back wall goes into this inner ring on the lower tube plate. Now, apologies if this goes out of shot. It's quite big, and it's quite hard to make sure I'm staying in shot. So that goes in. He goes over there. What's next? Next is the sort of O-ring, the internal furniture. That just slides into this channeled groove there, which, if we've done it right and it's lined up nicely, will just seat itself perfectly. It's loose and wobbly, but it'll be held in place when everything else goes in. Next up is the top piece of the tube, which should just slide on quite nicely. Perfect. Now, I actually hollowed out the pegs and tubes inside here. With a knife, I just hollowed out the tubes a little bit, just to make them easier to put together, so I could take it apart again without straining anything. So that's that on. Next is the outer O-ring. This goes around a particular way. You have these two tabs here and here. You can't see. This, especially because I've dropped it. This tab here and this tab on the other side face outwards towards the front because they go into the nose, and this tab at the bottom goes into that. That's how you know which way round it goes. So we'll get this put on. Right, so get the right way around. Tabs on the outside. Now this can be a bit of a tight fit, so it may not go on straight away. Don't force it too much, just be patient. It will go on. It's just a bit of a stretch. There we go. Right, so then we've got the nose cone. Two separate pieces. They just slot together. Not particularly firmly. If I can get it to work. And then that should just, those pins like I pointed out there, should slide into those little holes there. And we have, finally, our finished Millennium Falcon cockpit. This is a different colour because I primed this piece. So that's the whole thing. You kind of get an idea now how big this damn ship's going to be, because this is going to be massive. This is just the cockpit. So anyway, that's all built. Now let's get this light on and see what happens. So I'm going to turn my lights down. This is where it goes really dark. Now we all sit round and tell horror stories. Right, okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. And we have an illuminated cockpit. And actually, you know, that's pretty good. See if I can get closer with the camera and drag the power pack along. See if I can get this in focus as well, because this will suck if none of it's in focus. That's actually pretty nifty. You can see how the blue paint I put into the strip lights at the back just gives it that blue feel. That kind of blue. And it's not a solid blue, it's kind of patchy, like a strip light with a clouded plastic over the top. That's pretty darn cool. I'm liking that. It lights up the sides of those consoles quite nicely. So you can imagine when the whole ship's full of it, this is going to look kick-ass. Now, there is one issue. Let me turn off this other light so we can see it completely. Right, now we really are in the dark. Ooh. So there's your cockpit. That's looking pretty damn cool. Now, here's the problem. Look at that. Light leak. Now, not to worry. They do give you, let me turn the lights back on because there's no point sitting here in the dark. They do give you in the kit some black sticky strips or black stickers to cope with this, to deal with the light leak. Now, by all accounts, see, it's still pretty good even in strong light. By all accounts that I've read so far, they do the job, but they don't fit perfectly. But what I shall do is show you a very simple and quick method to actually fix light leak problems. It's basically called spraying paint on the inside. That will fix the light leak problem. So when it comes to sorting that out, we'll paint the inside of that. But that, so far folks, is the cockpit. And I think that's pretty impressive. I'm quite pleased with that. So that's going to do us for this time. Bit of a chaotic episode, bit of a jumble as always. But then hey, when was I ever organised? Next part, I suppose we're going to be making a start on the interior on the cargo bay. I can't say I'm swimmingly excited for that. It seems a bit basic, but as I said, I'm not going to be doing a lot of customization work, so I'm going to build it as it comes, just paint what we've got. So until next time, thank you very much for watching. As always, pop along to modelmaking.guru and check out stuff, and also follow me on Twitter @modelmaking.guru and Facebook, facebook.com/modelmaking.guru. You get the trend there, it's not hard. Catch up with you soon, but until then, adios amoebas.